We are Isla and Miguel, co-directors of BEatHome Festival. Thanks for joining us for this feedback session on the piece Stickman Uncut by Squarehead Productions that we presented on Sunday, 10th of May on live stream. We are going to be talking with Darragh McLoughlin. Have I said correctly your name, Darragh? Hello?
Yes, very good. Darragh McLoughlin.
Well, that's much better. Thank you.
My parents decided to give me a challenge for my life by giving me this name. So.
Well, Darragh is the founding director of Squarehead Productions.
And Darragh was born in Cork, am I correct?
Yep.
Yes,
born in Cork.
Yes, so he's Irish. And in 2008, he left Ireland to pursue what would become his circus training and career. Darragh was programmed on the postponed Physical Live Festival with his circus piece Stickman. And when we decided to do the digital festival, he jumped into the opportunity to adapt his piece to this online edition. Before we ask Darragh some questions and we jump into the Q&A, we're going to share with you a time-lapse video that condenses the 2 hours 38 minutes that the performance lasted live into 1 minute, with showing the last bit when the stick kind of ended. So here it is. That was great. It shows really well what we saw, very condensed. So Darragh, we're gonna jump straight into asking you some questions, and we'll do that. If there's anything you would like to say that we haven't asked you, feel free to do so. So the first question is, where did the idea for this piece come from, and why did you want for it to be a durational exercise?
So we're talking specifically about the Stickman Uncut opposed to Stickman the show that we were going to originally program.
Talk a little bit about how Stickman was created, and then how did you adapted the piece for this durational?
Yeah, so I guess it starts with my object manipulation practice. And so object manipulation is a term used a lot by jugglers who want a kind of broader term to define what it is we do. So juggling usually makes people thinking of throwing and catching, and object manipulation is more looking at objects and seeing what kind of uncodified ways we can interact with them, how we can make them move in ways that kind of bend their natural function and make them come more, rather than like a cup, for example, is made for drinking, but a juggler would see a cup as perhaps a thing for catching or a thing for putting a body part inside. So how can we change the functions of objects? And I became really interested in object balancing around, I've always been able to balance objects since I was 17 or something like this, 16, 17. But I got into it in a new way around 3 years ago, where I started firstly getting away from the normal thing of balancing a thing on my nose or the normal kind of circus trick, and rather doing a full body exploration. How can I get activate every part of my body and use each part to balance objects. And what I noticed was that was very unique and interesting for me was not how I could control the object, but rather how could the object influence me. And so object manipulation suddenly flipped on itself, becoming object manipulating the person instead of the master of the object telling the object what to do, which is the normal juggler role. We take I am the master and I will bend physics to make the object do what I want. And now I'm trying to relax and just let my body be available to see how the object can move me. And what I really appreciate is the level of authenticity that comes from the movement, that I'm not trying to make it look like something or move in a certain way. I'm trying to just be available for the movement and then observe what that looks like and see how I can use that. And so, yeah, it started, and an important thing I started doing is using a stick instead of using a juggling club or a spoon or something like this. And because the tendency in circus is we want things to get more and more difficult. So you have one ball, you do two balls, 3 balls, 4 balls, and it just goes on and on until you do the most difficult thing. But when you do the most difficult thing, you're kind of stuck. You're not free to move and explore anymore. So when I'm juggling 7 balls, my feet have to stay in one place. I can't look around, my eyes are fixed. And so I started trying to balance easier objects in harder ways. And this was a new approach for me. So instead of choosing the small stick, because then all my juggler friends will think I'm really cool because smaller is harder, I took a long stick. So then I could practice suddenly on my butt upside down, or I could practice not watching properly. I could practice on my side of my face. I could manipulate my jaw to balance it. And this approach of kind of simplifying it and then again reaching for that extremely difficult place, but in with a much kind of broader base to work from. So now I can use my whole body. I can use my pinky toe to balance. I can pretty much do it everywhere. And this opened up a whole different type of work where it was much more about the relationship between the object and the body than the person mastering the object. And the durational work, I mean, I've been quite interested in performance art and the relationship between circus and performance art for quite a long time now. And we had one teacher in my circus school that taught me this, and it was that if you take away theater and dance from circus, actually we are an art form that's really about doing an action. So I'm really throwing the ball. I'm really failing. I'm really trying. And there was something about this. There was something kind of sincere there that really touched me early on. And I thought with the durational work, well, one way to ensure something's going to happen to my body in a sincere way is just waiting and staying for as long as possible. And my body will change. It's a guaranteed kind of dramaturgical curve that's going to happen. And it's going to keep changing and get more and more difficult. And so at whatever point people saw me, they would firstly be seeing a unique point in that performance or journey. And secondly, for me, it would remain authentic and interesting. I wouldn't have to just do the script or say the lines. All I had to do is maintain and it will happen. And there was something quite peaceful about that. And that kind of, all these things came together to kind of confirm for me that this endurance work does have something really interesting that I would like to try and bring it into new spaces. Perhaps what happens when you see this in an exhibition space instead of a theater stage? What happens when you see it in a shop window? What happens when you have as much time to watch as you want? How will this change the relationship between me and the audience? And yeah, so when this happened and you guys offered to me, what would you like to do? I realized this is a perfect time to try something like this. And so here we are.
And did you do any kind of, how can you tell us a little bit more? How did you prepare specifically for doing this, and how did you, where did you take from in order to start working in this new direction? Because I think it was very interesting what you were saying about relationship with visual arts, and so I would really like if you can go a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah. Well, let me think, where's the best way to start? One thing that became very important is that I stopped calling myself a juggler, but rather saw myself as somebody who juggles. And that actually, once I kind of tried to just push that label to the side a bit and realize that actually my work comes from me, not from just this one little aspect of me, I can do what I want. So I can very easily do visual art by simply framing my work in a visual art context. It somehow will quickly become that. And so I'm trying more and more to not be held by these definitions that we put on ourselves, and that I have to, because for example, if I apply for money in Ireland, I have to choose circus, visual arts, dance, or theatre. I can't be just anything. And so sometimes I have projects where I feel they're more visual art project, but when I ask for advice, they say, yeah, but you're a circus artist, so you should keep calling it circus. And I don't want to deny the circus part of this, but I do see everything as a big Venn diagram. Everything's overlapping. And I'm very interested in what's in that segment where different art forms are overlapping, because people look at different art forms in different ways. So if I present my work as visual arts, how will people see me, and how will they see my work? And this has become very liberating, this way of thinking, because I can just do what I want now. And I don't have to be in a circus tent or have people clapping every time I do a trick, or like trying to just play with those norms, and in a way that gives me freedom, I guess. And in preparation, so that was one important part, is just changing how I'm thinking about all this. And then there's the practice, which is like I train in different ways. One thing I was doing in build up to this was trying to do an hour every day, one time, 1 hour. Place it on one. This is my easiest point at the moment because I'm practicing it a lot. Maybe we can talk about the different points in the body later. But I try to do an hour. I alternate between listening to an audiobook and doing it in silence. Because some days I just can't be asked to. It's a bit of torture because you're stuck in it. You can't relax and you can't get out of it. So sometimes having I'm listening to some random audiobook at the moment, and I find that quite soothing, but I also feel like I'm cheating. I feel I would like to be more of a Zen master than that, but sometimes I'm a bit lazy. And so, having the regular say again?
Yeah, no, carry on.
And then I try things like I try to get my girlfriend to, like, in the last 10 minutes to annoy me. So poke me and pull me, create distractions. We've been practicing how she can feed me water. So how to come into my space and give me one of these like kind of water bladder things and throw it to me that I can like drink while I'm doing it. So I realized and so I try to keep it as difficult as possible is what I'm saying. So once it becomes easy, I have a few options. Get someone to annoy me, shave my stick, make my stick shorter. That makes it a lot harder. So I'll practice with a more difficult prop. And then when I do it with the longer one, it's easier. So trying to find a way to keep me on edge while I'm practicing, and not that I become, that it just becomes second nature and I can just listen to audiobooks every day.
We'll go back to the challenges you faced during the performance later, but just for now, could you tell us a bit about time? Because, time was a key element of the piece. What was your perception of time during the performance?
My perception was very much like a signposted journey where I kept reaching points. I was coming up to something, and a lot of time they were time marks, like 1 hour, half an hour and a half. This becomes a part of my reality quite quickly, that I'm trying to do it minute by minute. Okay, come on, let's get to the next 10 minutes. Okay, we're in 10 minutes later, next one. And it's just having the carrot in front of me that I'm just constantly moving towards, but never reaching. And I think so time is a huge experience when I'm doing it. It's like the weight of it is very heavy. And the longer it gets, the heavier it gets, because I guess it's also my own stress and want to get further gets in the way of me getting further, because it becomes more a big deal. So it's really, there's a lot going on inside me when, firstly physically, but secondly, my mind is very much fixated on things, and I'm constantly just trying to relax it. So this has actually become much closer to my meditation practice than my circus practice in that regards. The thoughts coming in, let them go, relax. It's all the same stuff, but now I have the stick on me, which is forcing me to close my eyes, like it would be in meditation. The stick is relentless. I can't escape it. I can't blink too much. I can't look away, or I have to stay in. And that also adds something to it. It makes it in a way easier, because I have no choice. In meditation, you can just stop and get up. Here, stopping, it's over. So you gotta stay on it. So time is a big part of it.
Well, that's a good advice, I guess, for the confinement we are living, all of us, at this moment. And in that regards, trying to connect it with this situation, the current situation, an audience member who was moved by the piece left this message reacting to your work. First and foremost, the sternum, the thread of life, and the visualization of the breathing, the place that the people saw when they are suffocating like they are with this disease. So in that regards, can you tell us a little bit more about the process of connecting the piece to the current situation, not just the meditation, but also this breathing?
Yeah, I mean, I think with this work, my experience is unique. So everyone else has a completely different experience than me. And I think it's like this with most performance. But I'm there to generate these feelings for other people. But what I'm going through is completely different, actually. I'm in my own trip when I'm doing this. But I do feel it's at service to that, to let people see things they wouldn't see, or to come into something like that. Like, I was amazed that so many people watched it for so long. I really didn't expect that, and that people like this comment. I got a few different feedbacks from people that actually was very personal for them. So that's what that person, I think that's what they're going through more than what I'm going through. And that's what is interesting about this, because it becomes a reflection. Somehow the amount of time, because there's nothing really new happening, people also go into it in a very different way. But the physicality of it is of suffering, and of heart and lungs, and the stick in the stomach pierced. There's a lot of very powerful symbols there, that I think is just very fertile ground for people to be touched by, because it's already there somehow. I don't need to say what this work is about. I think people will very quickly jump on that themselves.
I guess in that sense is what is, for that reason, is very contemporary, because we really can kind of project as spectators what we are living in this moment. And I think in that sense is a piece of work that really connect with us in this moment, because we project with the breath, with the time, with a lot of things that are very simple done in the piece, but we really hook with those elements. So we are hooked.
And also, I don't know if it was conscious, but there is a choice of putting the stick in the sternum, and that choice has an effect in the lecture we get, or the reading we get of the piece. In particular, because the current situation, how the disease affects particularly the lungs. So, you know, there was a double meaning there. I don't know if you were conscious of that when you were doing the piece.
I'm aware that that's what people see. So I'm not too concerned about meaning when I'm making work. I'm happy that it's there, you know, and I'm happy that it's there in a strong way because of the choices. But I'm not trying to, that's not what I'm trying to make. I'm more just trying to set just make fertile ground for this stuff to come. And to not write what it's about, I think is very important. Because I think as soon as I say it is something, people will gravitate towards that. And so I'm quite hesitant to do that, but I am aware that that's what people see. But again, that's not my experience, because I'm really busy trying to keep that stick there. That's what I'm really focused on.
So in your trying to get the stick in balance, you faced a bit of a challenge during the performance. You had a visitor
yes.
you in the performance. Can you tell us a bit about how that affected your experience?
I had
a fly.
A fly, yes. I had 3 surprises actually that were very difficult. That made it technically way more harder than I expected. And I tried it, of course. I did some tests, but I didn't do a long run in that space. And in the first 10 minutes, you don't really notice things like this. It's more half an hour later you notice, and then you're like, fuck, why didn't I turn off that light in the corner? And then it bugs you for the next 2 hours. And one of them definitely was this fly. And so, like, what's happening when I'm doing a balance like that is it's pure, well, I would normally say hand-eye coordination, but it's pure eye-body coordination. So I'm like, if this is the stick, I'm staring here all the time. I can't look here. I can't glance in any other direction. I'm only 100% focused on this part. So whenever I've trained myself, so any movement automatically creates a physical reaction. I'm not even thinking about it. So this is happening. And then you have this other visual stimulus flying around it, looping it. And I swear, every time the fly passed my vision, the physical reaction went as a wave through my body as I just lurched with the fly, because it just created this distortion in my coordination. And it was very difficult. And then I thought it was over. And the last half an hour, the fly actually landed on the stick. I started running up and down the stick. And I think it was, I don't know if it was like dying or something. If it was, you know, the way flies sometimes get slow and they don't react so much. And I tried blowing on it and stuff, but the blowing, of course, was very difficult in my situation. And so I just had to really try to ignore this thing moving, because it was just completely destroying my technique. And it was like someone put on a wind machine suddenly. And I think this was a big part of why it fell, because it put me into a very high stress situation that I suddenly, even when it went away, the final 10 minutes, it wasn't there, but I was still reacting to it. I wasn't able to ground myself afterwards. And I just got more and more stressed by it. And there were other things, like, for example, the ceiling. I was in a very big room, but the ceiling was lots of wooden beams. And so you have this, and then 5 meters behind that is a wooden beam. But when they matched each other, I would suddenly, the background would become foreground, and it would create this kind of visual distortions again. So there's a lot of little things that I need to work on if I want to achieve a much longer time, which I hope to, I have to be in a very safe setting, or get over it and just really start practicing more and more with these kind of chaotic elements coming into my space. Another thing, my hat was falling off and it was stuck here, and I really wanted to do this, but I was just a bit stressed out and just left it there. So I just had these little things that were suddenly became like my whole world was focused on my hat not on my head, where's the fly, and I wish I had more lighting on the ceiling. And so that was a big part of my experience.
Okay, yeah. And well, the music in the piece play an important part in Stickman. What was the thinking behind the text Joseph Summer was reading and the music he or you choose to reflect time passing?
Yeah, so I've been collaborating with Joe Summers for a bit more than a year now, and we've been friends for a few years, and we met at an artist collective residency a couple of years ago. And this man just has an incredible database of sound. He's one of these sound obsessed people where they see a street preacher, and instead of being annoyed by it, they get their recorder out. You know, they hear a train passing, they get the recorder out, and he just has this incredible collection of bits. And I actually originally started collaborating with him in the work Stickman because I thought it would be great to have a normal character appear. And then I thought, well, Joe, I mean, the name Joe is perfect. And then I just thought Joe as a character was perfect for the work too. And he's a young artist, and he has a lot of fire in him. He wants to be heard himself, and I try as much as possible to give him that platform. And so in this, he pretty much had a carte blanche as to his choices, but we talked about the kind of not exactly what each of them were, but the general feeling we wanted to create. And so we thought a kind of something like a live radio mixed with some readings and some different sound bits he had would be perfect. And he gave me some examples of what they could be, and I said, yeah, they're perfect, go for it. And then he pretty much had a carte blanche. So he's been working with me a while, and actually I felt him playing with me a lot, much even more than playing with you guys. His choices were to tickle me as well, and which I really appreciated. And it gave me, like, whenever something came, like the podcast, it gives me something to relax to, something for my mind to focus on. And also because his choices were very particular, like he talked about a vampire, he talked about different creatures, he talked about metamorphosis, he talked about things like this. And as soon as two things come together, a story and an image, they merge. And I hope that's what people started experiencing, that, oh, that changes, it reframes it very much. And I think that's what his function was.
Why did you decide to have music and moments of silence?
Originally, I thought the original plan was that he would play something every 15 minutes. Exactly. Also to give me an indicator of where I was in time. So I wouldn't have to like shout to someone, hey, what time am I at? I could just stay in it. And we thought the silence would have a certain strength on its own. But I think we underestimated the medium we are using and the needs of the watchers in the medium. And I think the silence sometimes felt like a mistake or felt like an absence of something rather than something in itself, which I think in a live setting would be very different. And I noticed as the performance went on, he filled it more and more. And I think that was because of the needs of the watchers, of the audience, more than like he was adapting as it was going, to say.
The piece itself is really simple. There's, there's no big sets, not much other than you and Stick and Joseph. Also, there's no means, but there's a lot of skill. In principle, anyone can do what you're doing, but I mean, I've tried, and it's very, very difficult. Your work, the last piece we also programmed, the whistle, was also very simple in its concept. Do you always try to achieve that simplicity and yet full of layers?
Yes. Yeah, I search for that. I'm a big fan of minimalism. I like when you have a white page and you put one thing on it, that one thing is the most important thing in the world. And I try to not have too much noise going on in a piece, but to really, in all my work, I'm trying to write your experience more than mine. I really take on a different role in that. And I want to create a space that allows people to dive in, not to sit back and watch, but to enter it. And I often talk this thing that I don't want people sitting here. I want them here in the work, in the theater. I want them leaning forward, and and I feel the more space I give, the more they have to fill. So when I fill it, they don't have any room but to watch. So I think if I think of a movie in the cinema, most movies, I'm simply watching. I'm not really participating, apart from being a watcher. But in the sort of work I make, I consciously try to leave big holes in the work. And maybe that's only by removing sound or by having space. But I find as soon as I leave a hole, people have to fill it. If they say yes to the work. So first I want them to say yes. Like in the whistle, I have my introduction. Do you want to play? Everyone says yes. Okay, you're in now. Now you have to do it. It's not, I'm just here I can help you do it, but you have to participate. And I think in all my work, I really want that feeling that the people are in the work. They are also taking a role of, and in the end, they are also creating the work because it's their imagination which fills it, their experience. And like the quote from that you read out, that came from that person, that came from her. And that's the most important thing, because I think we create the things we fear, we create the things we love, and when we can put that into work, it will be more powerful because it will become personal. Then we are a part of this piece. And in Stickman, I'm using language in this way. So I, like in the show that was supposed to be at BEfestival, where I'm just having a single word appearing or a single sentence. And sometimes that's conflicting with your reality, but you then have to deal with that. You have to make sense of that. And I'm contradicting myself all the time. I want it, yeah, it only means what we say it means. So let's play with that game. Let's play that game. So I'm very into games and game theory and the seeing human interaction as play. And so I try to bring that into my work as much as possible. I guess that's it. Does that answer that question?
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely. I think it was really interesting, the talk. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to kind of tell us?
Not so much. Well, if people are curious I hope this project is something that goes. I'm working with, at the moment, 2 other artists, and really pushing them to bring this level of endurance to their own work. So, for example, I've one artist, Roman Skadra, who was traditionally doing walking globe, which is like a circus, the ball people run on in circus. So he's doing that, but carrying it. So it's a 30-kilo ball, 1 meter in diameter, and he's trying to carry it for hours now. And so again, the same process of his body is being forced to change. So I'm trying to gather a group of artists to do this in festival formats. For example, in the foyer at BEfestival, there's someone holding a ball for 8 hours. That's it. People go around, they do their thing, but that's going to change. They come out of a show, he's still there, and how can this sort of thing also I think it's very adaptable, and it could go into festivals, exhibitions, and at the same time stay really true as a challenge for the artist, which is also very important, that the work stays alive. So I hope this will kick off in the next year, and we're trying to reimagine it as a kind of one-to-one project at the moment. So one audience member will enter the room, they will spend as much time with you as they want, they will leave again. So also changing the hierarchy of, instead of having a big audience and one artist, suddenly you're one-on-one. And I think, yeah, that's a bit kind of strategies to adapt to our situation and keep things moving and not feel like we're just on pause here is a big part of it. And yeah, and I have just some little side projects I'm working on. Here you can see it. It's an improvised strategy game. So a game with no rules, where you have to play and make up the rules as you're going on. So trying to develop that as a tool that I can release, and just try to keep things ticking along, really. So I have to say, actually, this project has been quite surprising for me, because I haven't seen so many streaming works that really worked for me, and I was a little bit dubious to do it. And I'm very happy how it turned out, and how it also motivated me to keep working. You know, that it put a really nice deadline in the middle of this quarantine, where I just, okay, that's what I have to work towards. Let's go for it. So thank you guys for offering that.
Thank you to you. We really appreciate it, and we really enjoy it also. So I think we are very happy too.
Great. I'm happy you're happy.
I think we call it an end now.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Darragh, for all this insight into your practice. It was thought-provoking. For everyone who wants to see more about the festival, you can do so by exploring our website. That's BEfestival.org. Thank you very much.
Great. Have a lovely day, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.